Well, hello, friends and family. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving day yesterday. I just hope you enjoyed yourself. Hey, it's Friday now. It's the end of the week. Black Friday, and I know a lot of people are going to be shopping and going on, and there's going to be a whole bunch happening between now and the first of the year with all the holiday celebrations and things. Hey, but just make sure you do one thing. Make sure in the middle of all that you're doing, make sure that you don't stay too busy for God. Make sure that you stay focused on Him and you keep Him the number one priority in your life. Let's make sure that we don't make the mistake that people did in Noah's day and that people have a tendency to do today, and that is just to get so busy with everyday life that we just kind of push God aside. Well, hey, you know what we're talking about? We're dealing with the subject we've called faith like Noah. Pretty much we've determined that that is a good faith to mimic. If you're going to mimic a faith, that's the one to do it, because that faith that Noah had, he survived during the era that he lived in. It was a committed faith. It was an enduring faith. It was the faith that saved him from the judgment of sin during that era. And it's the same faith that will cause us to survive and thrive in the world that we live in today that's just like that one. And it will also deliver us from the judgment of sin that is to come to this world, I believe, very soon at the return of the Lord. Now, we've been trying to answer a few questions about this subject. We talked about life before the flood, what it must have been like, and how it compares to life today. And then for a couple of days, we talked about did the people of Noah's day really know the flood was coming? And we've learned without a doubt God gave those people ample warning during that antediluvian period, just like He has today. He has given the world ample warning that He is a righteous God, but He will judge sin. The problem with us today is the same as it was in Noah's day. We read it from Peter's writings. People just choose to deliberately forget that God will judge sin. He will do what He says He'll do. He will be patient and long-suffering a long time. I mean, God must be the most long-suffering and patient being in existence today, because He will bear up under the load and be long-suffering with sin a long time. But He will judge it like He said He will do. And we just must not confuse God's patience with God's permission. Just because He hadn't judged sin yet doesn't mean that He won't do it. He will do it. And so you have to ask yourself, how many warnings does God have to give mankind? How many times does God have to tell us that He's going to judge sin? How many times does God have to tell us that we need to make sure that we get in the ark, which is Christ, so that we can be saved from judgment that is to come? How many times does He have to tell us? Up until the time of the flood, it was God's long suffering that kept man from destruction. But at some point, God's patience wore out, and He said, that's enough. And mankind was left to his own devices and suffered the judgment of the flood. That is going to happen today. It is going to happen in this life that we live in right now. When we rebel against God, sooner or later, God's patience will run out, and He will give us up to face the consequences of our own willfully sinful choices. He's not going to always beg us. He's not going to always protect us from ourselves. He is going to judge sin. The thing is, just when is God's patience going to wear thin? And when is God going to say, let it rain? Well, there's a passage about this in Hosea chapter 4, and it's a topic the Bible teaches from beginning to end. When you read it, most people don't want to grasp it. They don't want to believe that God's this way, but He simply is. Hosea chapter 4 says, Israel slides back as a backsliding heifer. Now the Lord will feed him as a lamb in a large place. Israel is joined to idols. Let him alone. That whole thing that God is trying to teach there, he compared Israel, first of all, to a backsliding heifer. And that's just an uncontrollable and intractable cow. It just won't plow. It won't do what it's intended to do. It just sits down on its hind hunches and just puts its feet in the mud and just refuses to move. That's what backsliding is. And then he compared them to sheep that were fed in a large place. And what he's referring to there, that's sheep that are always bucking against the fence, and they're always pushing against the gate of the sheepfold. They're always pushing the issue with God until the shepherd finally just opens the gate and said, hey, you want to be out there? Go ahead, get you some of it. Go ahead out there. If you want to be outside of the protection of the fold, go ahead and get you some of it. And he tells his shepherds, let them alone. Let them alone. You know, that is exactly what happened in the day of Noah. And that is going to happen in this day and in this hour. It's going to happen as well. How long will it be before God just opens the gate and says, hey, you want that? Then go and have it. How long is it going to be before God just says, hey, just leave them alone? And he doesn't deal with man like that anymore. In the book of Romans, Paul actually mentions it in chapter 1 3 times, how men keep running to sin and rejecting God. And he shows 3 different occasions how God just gives man up to his own devices. I don't know how many times God has to warn us, friend. Sooner or later, his long suffering is going to run out, and his cup of judgment is going to be poured out on this nation and on this world. And the only thing that's going to save us from that is faith like Noah. And that's the last thing that we want to answer. Is why was Noah spared? It was that faith that he had. That faith that he had in God's grace. Genesis 6:8 said Noah found grace. He found favor in the eyes of God. That's why he was spared. And that's the same reason that you and I will be spared the wrath of God as well. It's by God's grace. It's by the faith that we have in God's grace. It's through the saving power of Jesus Christ, who is the modern day Ark of Noah. Hebrews chapter 11 verse number 7 said, by faith Noah was warned by God concerning events that were yet unseen. And in reverent fear he constructed an ark for the saving of his household. And by this he condemned the world and became an heir of righteousness by faith. That's the answer, my friend. Righteousness by the faith that we have in Jesus Christ through the grace that he has extended to us. That's how we get in the ark. And we need to get in the ark and let God shut the door. And once we get in the ark, we need to stay in the ark, my friend. Noah's faith in God's grace led him to have a holy fear of God's judgment. That led him to build the ark for the safety of his family and to fulfill the purpose of God for his life. God spared Noah because he believed, he received, and he obeyed the grace of God. And you and I need to do the same. Well, hey, it's been good being with you this week. I look forward to being with you on Monday's edition of Take 5. We're going to look at this subject of Noah and come from just another different angle and glean some more truth from this all-powerful subject of this great man of faith. God bless you and have a great weekend.